Hey everyone, welcome back to another guide. Today we're going to explore this place, but with the help of maps. So this is your ultimate guide. I'm your host, the Obsidian Noob, and let's get straight into what we're going to cover today. So this is going to start off with the real basics, what a map is, how you get one, how you expand it, copy it, all of that fun stuff. Then we're going to look at how to create some kind of marker system in Bedrock so you can find your way around. And then lastly, we'll finish up with the cartographer and the special maps of treasures and trial chambers and how you find everything. So before we jump in, as with all of my guides, make sure you use the timestamps for the bits you need, or you can watch the whole thing, it's up to you. And if you wouldn't mind dropping me a like and a subscribe, then that would be awesome as well. But let's go. So how are you first going to get a map? Well, if you're not too fussy, you can just come into your advanced options when you start a new world and click start in map. It's as simple as that. I'd also recommend sticking on show coordinates because this makes a world of difference when you're trying to navigate a huge map scale with multiple different areas. Now, if you're already in a game or you didn't select that box, then don't worry, we're going to start from scratch and I'll talk you through really quickly how to get yourself up and running. So the first thing you're going to want to do is just try and find some kind of water, and hopefully just like this you're going to find yourself some sugarcane growing on the outside. Now the sugarcane is what is going to be most useful to you because this is ultimately where you're going to get your paper source from, and in fact it's actually a real vital resource in all of your survival games, even if you're thinking about just doing some enchanting, because ultimately the sugarcane is what you're going to turn into paper. Now what I would always recommend in the survival world is taking the sugarcane. I mean, you don't always want to break your source blocks, but in this case what I always do with mine is I always go to create a manual sugarcane farm. This isn't any kind of real fancy stuff, this is just putting it by a water's edge and then waiting for it to grow so you've got an endless source of paper. Now one of the things you are going to need to actually make the map itself is a cartography table, and you'll see that by searching something like cart it doesn't come up in your normal craftable recipes. That's because you will need a crafting table to access this, so once you have that you can just deploy that into your world and then you can just search for cart again, and then that will give you your cartography table, which is real simple. It's just 4 planks and 2 pieces of paper. But one of the most important things with all survival games is to have manners and say hello to the locals.
Hey, hello. Hey, hello.
Okay, enough of my poor humour, let's get back to what we're here for. If you come to your crafting table now and you go into your items, you'll see your paper recipe. We actually need 3, so we'll break up another one. I wouldn't normally recommend using the source bricks, let them grow a little bit more so that you've got your source of paper. But when you've got 3, you can then make the cartography table like that, and we've actually got our first piece of paper for our map. When you place your cartography table, it's going to give you this new crafting window, and this gives you your option to craft. So you can put your paper in the top one here, and then it will say empty map, which is what it's going to give you. But I like to rename my map, so I always call my starting one the starting area where the world spawn is, and then that helps me keep track of where everything is when I create multiple maps later on. The next thing you need to do is actually deploy the map and start using it. So if you hold it and select it and then you press your place button, it will do this and it will create you a lovely looking map of your world. So let's move on and talk about what you're going to do next once you've got some more paper. So let's say that your sugarcane has grown back like this, you've gone and got yourself some new paper and you're ready to carry on with your map. One of the things that we're going to look at doing after we replenish our paper source, which is here, we're then going to look at expanding the map. So you've got a starting area map, and when you looked at it, it was quite zoomed in, right? And it says here that it's level 0 of 4. So what we can do is we can then use the bottom box underneath the starting area map to put some plain paper in. And what you'll see now is that says zoom out and clear in the middle. So this map is a really zoomed in 0 of 4 levels. That's going to give us level 1 of 4, and it uses 1 paper. Now we can take that off and we've got our starting map. It's still as it is, but this time it says 1 of 4, and when we reactivate that you'll see it has zoomed out a little bit more. So ideally what you really want to do early on is get your map in, and then you want to zoom it out to level 2 and then level 3 and then, as you can guess, level 4, and then that's going to give you the full zoomed out version of your map. So when you now look at it, you'll see it's a tiny little circle compared to that massive great big one you started with, but this gives you you an idea of the actual scale of the size of Minecraft, because this is just your map. The other thing that I'd recommend you doing is when you've got something like your starting area map, is you can create a duplicate of that in case you ever lose it, which can be really frustrating. If you put a normal bit of paper in to create a normal map again, and we take the empty map and we'll just pop that there, then we go back into this. This time we don't want to activate it because we want the blank map to make a copy from, right? So we're going to put the starting area map in the top, and then we're going to this time put the empty map in the bottom, and you'll see now, look, we have a lovely number 2 by it, which means we can now make a duplicate map, so if we inevitably die and we lose one, it isn't the complete end of the world. There are many reasons for having duplicate maps. I'll cover a few in this video in the timestamp about setting waypoints on your maps, because that's going to be where that comes in very useful. Nice, so now we've got our map, and you're probably thinking, but noob, this isn't useful to me because I can't see anything at all on my map about where I am. Whereas if you'd have taken the easy option and started with a map, you might find yourself with a player marker in the middle, just like this. And the good news is, well, you can create that, but that's what the major difference is if you're going from scratch. And to create that, you're going to need a compass, which can be quite tricky to get early game, but once you have one, the process is really simple. You just go back to your cartography table, put your main map back into the top section, and this time we're going to add the compass into the bottom section. And guess what? We now get this lovely bit of line of text that says map that shows players, and essentially all that's going to do is add on your player locator. But the thing to remember is your main map is what your duplicate comes from. So if you made your duplicate like I did just now before adding the locator, we don't get that on the new map. Whereas if we'd have added the locator first and then done the duplication, the new map would also have the locator on. So that's definitely something to keep in mind as you go forward with your map creations. Now earlier I mentioned the benefits of having duplicate maps in case you die, but another one is so you can visualize your world. So once you have an abundance of paper, a whole bunch of sticks, and you've spoken to the island locals with either your fists or a pointy object, then you can get yourself some leather. That's what you're going to need for this next stage. And what you're going to want to do is build yourself something like this. This is what I call my map wall, and pretty much every survival world I have has got one of these in it. So what we're going to do is we're going to make some item frames using those raw materials, and this is where we're going to put our maps to make sure we can see where we're going. I'll create a few for this demonstration, but I won't go through it in all of the detail. So this is our starting area, so we're going to bang that straight in the middle. Now remember, Minecraft worlds are essentially infinite, so you can keep expanding this as much as you want. But when we put the map in the middle like that, you can see we can now see what we've got on our starting map. And the great thing is with this, that as you go off exploring, providing that you're either holding your map and keeping it open, or you put it in your offhand slot, that will update the map to show you where you've explored. And then when you return after a lovely long day exploring, then what you'll find is not only the map in your hand has expanded, but you'll also see the one that's linked to it, providing you've used your duplicate one, well, that's expanded too. So if we take that one step further and we now put down some of the other frames, we'll put down a north, south, east and west, and I won't go through all of these, but I'll just give you the general gist of the idea. What you're going to want to do is create a new blank map. So for this one, we'll just do it for south. You're then going to go to the southernmost point of your map, to the point where your locator then turns into a circle, and what that's going to indicate to you is that that dot means you've moved off map. You're going to open your new map, so this is our South 1 map, our blank map, and you probably want to take a cartographer table with you rather than going backwards and forwards. But then what you're going to want to do is the same process before, so this is our map 3, which is actually our South 1 map, so we're going to expand it out to the 4th level, and then what we're going to want to do is make a copy of that, and then go back to make sure that we've got our area covered. So you can see now the blue area now is where it's expanded a little bit, and this is why I say rather than going back and forth, you're better off with your cartography table. So then we come back to our main base, we rename it, or if you was clever enough you could have renamed it at the start, I just simply forgot. And then we're going to copy that map exactly as we did before, putting the blank one in. So we've got 2 South 1 maps, because we want our master one for when we're exploring, and then we're going to want the other one, which we're going to stick right here. So bang, and as you can see, that's now joined up. So hopefully that gives you an idea of how you can make a big world map. Now, you've probably seen all over the internet videos about using banners to make markers for your map. Well, the bad news is on Bedrock, no you can't. It's only on Java. But I do have a workaround for you. And let's just say on South 1 on this map, on the left side, we just found a lovely village and we want to mark that as a point of interest. Well, if you make a duplicate of your South 1 map, just like this, and you pop it into an item frame in that area, then what that will do is it will create another marker for you on your main map. Some of you might be more technical and can think of other ways of doing this without zooming maps out and so on, but for now that should serve as a point of interest, and hopefully if you've been using coordinates you can just make a little note of which point of interest relates to which coordinates. So let's move on to talk about the cartographers, and unlike some guides that will say just find a cartographer, I'm actually going to tell you how to find one if there isn't one in the village that you've just stumbled across, and that is by creating one yourself. If you just go and find any other profession, like we'll just use these crop farmers here, if we break up the block that they are linked to and then we drop down a cartographer table, what will happen is it will rebind and get a new profession. So those two didn't change back into villagers, but if we drop the cartographer table, you can see the green stars indicating someone in this village has bound to that new cartography table, and in fact it's actually a farmer from the other side of the village, this guy, who has now become our cartographer. So you can see his novice trades here: paper for emeralds and 7 emeralds for an empty map. That is extortionate, but there are a couple of locked ones here, so we'll cut away, do some trading, and now we can go back in and I can show you the unlocked ones, which are a savannah village and a taiga village map as well. And there are a couple here now under journeyman, and this is what we wanted to get to. You'll see this one's got some orangey copper looking writing, this one's got some blue writing, so I do wonder if this is a underwater temple map and a trial chamber. But this is where you can find some of your more specialist maps, and that takes us nicely into the next section. So in our final section today, we're going to talk about explorer maps. These are the maps that you can get to things like buried treasure, to mansions, trial chambers, underwater temples, and even villages. I mean, there is a big old list of different type of explorer maps you can get, but for this example we're just going to cover the treasure one because by far it's probably the most difficult to locate, and essentially the process is the same once you've got it as to how you find the end result. So for the treasure one, what you're probably going to want to do while you're out exploring is try to find a shipwreck, a bit like this. Now the next job is going to be to plunder the shipwreck and look for the one or more chests that there should be on board. The first place you want to check is the main hold, which is there, which is where all of the trapdoors are, and there you can see we've got one there that's nice, easily accessible, but we don't have a treasure map. And in this instance, on the opposite side of that wall, towards the other side of the ship, as we jump down this one, there is a door, and you can just open up that door, and in here there's another one. And in this one there is an unknown map and the treasure map that we're after. Remember that even when you're looting you are losing your air bubbles, so you will take damage like this if you forget to come up in time, but we've got what we wanted for, so we can hop back in the boat and now we'll cover how you're going to find that treasure. Explorer maps look really difficult, but they're really not, and I'll teach you how to solve them. The idea is you're going to be looking for the X, that's where your destination is, and for things like underwater temples or trial chambers, they're generally going to be below you. Mansions and villages naturally are going to be above, but the tricky one is going to be treasure because it's buried, right? So that's what we're going to use as our example today. Now, the way that I would suggest solving this is when you look at your map, you're going to see probably that your circle means you're nowhere near where this is, but in this case our destination is left of our circle. So if we use our locator map and point north, right, because obviously forwards is north, and we know that it's to our left, well, if we turn 90 degrees left and start running in that direction, well, that's going to move our target, well, not our target, our locator circle is going to move left, so it's going to move west, right? And the idea is, of this theory, well, it's not actually a theory either, is it? See, I am a noob. You're going to keep going left until your circle, so your locator circle, is underneath the X, and then it will start to move. So when you get closer and closer, I mean, this was a whole map away, so that's why I had to cut the editing because it took so long to run it. But as you get further and further and further, away from your location and towards where you need to be, you'll see at the bottom that white dot starts to move, right? So you know that you're almost as far as you need to go west before you then turn right 90 degrees. So when we turn the camera right 90 degrees, we're then going to be facing north, that's right, and then that's going to be a case of just going straight until we reach the X of where we want to be. And then as we get closer, you'll see that the map itself starts to fill itself in on the treasure map. All of those shaded lines are starting to become blue, indicating that we're in water. And then naturally, when we look at that X, that means that's going to be on the shoreline somewhere, or, as I really hate, the worst case scenario is it's under the water, in which case you've then got to probably play around with a bunch of zombies before you can start trying to find the treasure. Okay, so what we're going to now want to do is try and line ourselves up nicely with the major point bit of this locator directly in the middle of the X. So that's going to indicate that somewhere down there, we'll deal with the local wildlife first. Oh. Right, anyway. So, lining it up in the center like that, it's going to give you a rough idea of where it is on the line. That's almost pretty much bang center. So it's going to be aligned with that second block. We'll just get some extra bubbles. So the second block's that one there, right? So it's going to be somewhere in that line before there. So we'll just start making a little trench, and it should be right. So it's right there. Okay, so we're going to go and get some more air, and then we'll go and just see what treasure we got, because that's the fun part, right? So we got Heart of the Sea, music discs, a celebratory cake, a diamond, and a potion of water breathing. That'll be useful another time, perhaps. So there you go. So let's get a screen up for you, and now let's slow everything down and zoom it in so you can see exactly what I'm talking about. So you see at the top of that X, where the nose bit is of the locator, there's almost like a little part of the X that comes across into the middle. That's the bit that you're looking for. And I really think that that's probably the simplest way of explaining it. I'm sorry if I've made that more complicated than it needed to be, but that should give you a rough idea within a few blocks of what you need. I think that's pretty much everything to do with maps. I feel like I've done it to death and back again, so hopefully that has been useful to you. If it has, consider subscribing to my channel, and please like the video to help other people find this kind of content, because it will be just as useful to them. Wherever you are in the world, happy exploring, and remember, don't die.